The following week, you're in the main event of the Valentine's Day Thunder for the go home show for Super Bowl. The Observer would say the main was Jarrett and Rick Steiner over DDP and Rhodes, which included a Scott Steiner run in and Jarrett pinning DDP with the stroke. And the show ended with another huge brawl. Report is it wasn't overall a good show, but at least those from there who were there live, there was no sign of Nash on Thunder. And apparently, the selling point of the show is they don't know if Nash will be ready for the pay per view or how ready he'll be, which is a strange way to try and hook people into buying a show by telling them the babyface isn't going to be ready for his title match. Boy, when you step back, maybe we were too deep in the forest to see the trees, but when you step back, that is not the best way to sell the pay per view.
Was it because of Kevin's dates? Couldn't appear on TV. You know, I mean, the whole what ifs, because I was sitting there going through the notes and thinking, like, there are so many unanswered questions that, man, I'd almost like to be in your seat, be able to ask Eric, say, hey, Eric, in January and February, you had to have had plans on where you hoped it would go. So how did that relate to creative and the pieces of the puzzle put together and what here? Because
he was going to blow it all up anyway with the Big Bang.
Yeah. And so why wouldn't Nash be on this episode?
He wanted like Rob Van Dam on the show and Joey Styles to be the voice of the show and Jerry Lawler to be his commentary partner. And, you know, he was going to have to go to all the big name talents like the Hogans and the Nashes and people like that and say, hey, love to have you. Can't honor this contract. It sort of worked the WWE angle that they wound up doing. But he felt like since it was him and he would offer more creative whatever, and it was going to be in Las Vegas, that maybe it could be an easier circumstance. Yeah. Well, because you know, you're eliminate the WWE schedule in 2001, man, they're hotter than ever. So they're doing more towns than ever. So the travel is what would get you. But if you're just flying into Vegas a couple times a month, that's easier.
Yeah.
By far.
But it's a different mindset too.
Yeah.
Completely. Especially at the stage of where different guys were at in the career.
It's interesting to think too, though, that, you know, and you should bust his balls about this sometime because I shouldn't say I know, I believe that he was one of the guys behind the scenes pushing in TNA saying, we got to get on the road. You know, we can't just be in this damn soundstage. But when he was going to do it with his own money, he was sliding it inside the joint at the Hard Rock. And it was just going to be a show that we slide the shit out for the set. We do our show and then we push it backstage and other people do other things in this venue. But he was kind of doing the same thing in Vegas. That was the plan anyway.
But you know what? The beauty of Memphis TV, we were in a newsroom.
Yeah.
That's where we created all the stories through the years. That's a real blessing because when I look at NXT, I look at obviously the TNA experience and just kind of look at different, we'll call it venue, residency, studio, all of that, and then, okay, just kind of juxtapose, we're going to be looking at, you know, Sting's last match in Greensboro has great meeting. I think it's the perfect place to have that. That's why I think location is very important. It's the professional wrestling business to a T. It is so subjective. Sting's last match, yes, you need it in I don't think, so we're going to have 16,000 people. I don't think 16,000 people in Greensboro is having the 16,000 people in Lubbock, Texas. I think it's very appropriate. That's where we're going. On the other hand, a television show, and they just set a record, WWE did, and Utah and Rock and all that kind of stuff. But that creative had nothing to do with Utah. So it's interesting to hear different opinions on social media about, oh, you can't do a studio and this and that. No, folks, if you make creative, compelling content, they're going to watch or they're going to come out and watch your live events and da-da-da-da-da. I don't know. Interesting. It really is interesting. And to hear you say, yeah, Eric was one of the ones pushing in TNA. He absolutely maybe leading the charge. No, I got to give that to Hogan. Hogan was leading the charge.
I think, and listen, I understand why he was doing that, but I just think it's interesting that when it was going to be Eric and his own money, he was like, we're going to do the soundstage thing. Just like you did. Just like you did. Let's talk about what the Observer was saying here. The temporary elimination of Kevin Nash and putting as much heat on the heels, in particular the CEO Ric Flair, as a way to build the new ownership group when they come in to be the big baby faces, was a key piece of business at the Super Brawl pay-per-view on February 19th at the Nashville Municipal Auditorium. Now that is an interesting way to phrase that. The new owners. So did you imagine that we were really turning the volume up with this heel authority figure stuff so Eric Bischoff could come in as a babyface and save the day? Because that is a head scratcher to me. Eric's natural disposition, like if he had his druthers, he'd want to be a heel every time, not the babyface.
But context is king.
Yeah.
The ground laid right and a new, what was he going to call it? The Big Bang.
Yeah.
Coming out of that, I think in a lot of ways he'd been the perfect babyface. Now I think it would have run its course and he'd need to be flipped back over to being a antagonist. But for a short term, Eric make a hell of a babyface in my opinion.
Let's talk a little bit about the matches here. We got an impromptu match with Canyon and DDP. They go 8 minutes and 15 seconds. And Meltzer would say, to explain this, Jeff Jarrett showed a tape where Page said he'd face Canyon anytime, anywhere. So Jarrett said Flair ordered the match to take place right now. Canyon comes from under the ring, attacks Page. They have a pretty fun match here. After a ref bump, you're going to hit the stroke on Page. Canyon pins him with the flatliner, 3 1/4 stars. And then we see you work DDP. So you're clearly trying to get him to soften up for you. And whereas Canyon beats him, he beats you 8.5 minutes. The match starts right away. And Meltzer would say both bouts were cut back well in time because the show was running so long. And eventually Jarrett's going to clock Page with a chair to the head, but he kicks out. Jarrett goes to hit Page with the guitar, but he moves and hits Canyon instead. And then Page gives Jarrett a diamond cutter for the pin, 3.5 stars. Do you remember your time being cut? What do you remember about Super Brawl in your backyard there?
There was a couple of references during all the notes about our time being cut. I don't remember specifically that. On the flip side to that is they could have, maybe Dave got the report. I don't know, but also in this era of WCW, we had a lot of matches. So not all the matches got a lot of time. They didn't. Another thing, Conrad, a little inside baseball here. Marcus, will you put up that last guitar shot? You see how many pieces that guitar is in right there? Just completely shattered. That is a WCW 101 guitar shot made straight out of Hollywood. Those are the most expensive guitars that I ever swung. So that fan account, JJ Greatest Hits on Twitter, check it out. JJ Greatest Hits. It's got every guitar shot, but the WCW guitar shots from a visual, and when you put them in slow motion, it's a hell of a shot.
What do you recall how much they cost? Those garages? I mean, those guitars?
I think they were 700 plus shipping.
Oh, wow.
They were prop. They were made. They were
a real deal.
Yes, Hollywood guitars.